Gulag, Many Days, Many Lives, takes you inside the brutal system of forced labor concentration camps and internal exile, an institution called the Gulag, to which the Soviet Union subjected millions of its citizens. Gulag prisoners performed dangerous physical labor in the mines, forests, and construction sites of the harshest inhabited climates on Earth. Starvation food rations, rampant disease and violence from guards as well as other prisoners tormented the Gulag prisoners' daily existence. Soviet authorities found the Gulag a useful tool to neutralize and often physically destroy all real or imagined opposition to the Communist Party's dictatorship. Yet it also served as the main Soviet penal system, punishing the same type of criminals incarcerated in virtually any country. Soviet authorities utilized the Gulag as the key weapon in their battle to rehabilitate or destroy criminals, class enemies, and political opponents once and for all, while simultaneously accomplishing the economic goal of opening remote regions to resource exploitation. Although camps existed from the time of the 1917 Russian Revolution itself, they only became the home to millions of prisoners in the early 1930s under the rule of Joseph Stalin, and they declined precipitously after his death in 1953. Though smaller and more focused on serious criminals, forced labor camps for political prisoners lasted into the late 1980s when reformer Mikhail Gorbachev led the Soviet Union. Soviet dissidents made up an important but small portion of the post-Stalin camp population. The last camp for political prisoners outside of Perm, Russia was closed in 1988 and has since been turned into a historic site in Gulag Museum. In the Stalin era, some 18 million people passed through the prisons and camps of the Gulag, and perhaps another 6 or 7 million were sent into exile. More than 1.5 million prisoners died in the Gulag at the hands of their own government. Even those who survived had their lives destroyed by this brutal institution. In the exhibit that follows, Gulag, Many Days, Many Lives, you will be assigned one former Gulag prisoner to accompany you through your exploration of life in this brutal institution. As you go from section to section, you will learn not only of the general story of this horrific institution, but you will also see the life story and the experiences of this individual unfold before you. After your trip through the exhibit, we invite you on a virtual visit to the Gulag Museum at Perm 36. When citizens of Stalin's Soviet Union climbed into bed at night, an uninterrupted sleep was never a guarantee. The secret police's sharp 2 a.m. knock often launched an odyssey into the hellish depths of the Gulag. Many would never return alive. When that 2 a.m. knock came, only one set of lights burned in an entire apartment building, that of the arrested man or woman. In cramped communal apartments, nothing remained secret, and neighbors would peek furtively out their door, trying not to be noticed, trying not to be next. Frightened family members would watch as the secret police searched for potentially incriminating materials, anything that might indicate independent thought. Most new prisoners believed their arrest to be a mistake. The Soviet police operated unpredictably, arresting people not only in the dark of night, but also in the light of day. No matter when or where arrest occurred, special trucks outfitted with tiny prison cells hauled the new prisoners to their tormentors in an interrogation prison. The crushing loneliness of solitary confinement awaited some. Crowded cells smelling of sweat, urine, and feces greeted others. Prisoners only escaped their cell for marathon interrogations, enforced sleeplessness, and other forms of torture designed to elicit their confessions to often invented crimes. Interrogations concluded with a farcical trial that lasted perhaps several minutes before pronouncement of a predetermined verdict. For many, this was the end. A death sentence carried out almost immediately. The lucky found themselves boarding a stinking, crowded cattle car with just a hole in the floor for a toilet. Days or weeks later, they arrived to begin their sentence in a Gulag labor camp, usually with a weakened body and confused mind. Armed guards and attack dogs accompanied many prisoners' daily march to their Gulag worksite. Icy winds battered their poorly clothed and barely fed bodies. Prisoners will die this day digging in the mines. Prisoners will die this day digging a 140-mile canal with the most primitive tools. Prisoners will die in the forest and in construction. Only the lucky will avoid hard labor in a workshop, a cafeteria, or an office. Gulag labor was inefficient and often lethal. Officials distributed food according to labor output, forcing prisoners to work long, hard hours trying to complete often impossible quotas so that they might receive a full food ration. But even full rations often failed to provide enough calories to ensure health and survival. Exhaustion and starvation constantly accompanied prisoners. Many returned from work dead, carried on the backs of their fellow prisoners who then had to extend their workday to dig graves for the fallen. Deep, pounding hunger pangs tormented the Gulag prisoners every moment. Shoving their way to the cafeteria window, prisoners cried out for food, always knowing, but wanting to forget that the thin, watery gruel, that the small hunk of bread, sometimes made of little more than sawdust, that these pathetic meals would never prepare them for the climatic assault of the day. The pathetic rags, not even worthy of being called clothes, no more protected prisoners from the constant cold than the pitiful food satisfied their constant hunger. The Gulag, after all, inhabited some of the planet's coldest places deep in frozen Siberia. Barely heated, crowded barracks stank of the ill and the dying. Though even this was better than the punished prisoners, who could spend months in a totally unheated, dank punishment cell with no blankets and a sub-starvation penalty food ration. Over many Gulag camp gates, a slogan declared, "Labor in the USSR is a matter of honor, glory, courage, and heroism." In the barracks, posters screamed, "Glory to Stalin, the greatest genius of mankind." At the workplace, banners urged more gold for our country, more gold for victory. These proclamations of the glories of socialism, the heroism of Soviet labor, and the possibilities of re-education and reintegration into Soviet society sat uneasily in an environment saturated with death and deprivation. Millions survived their Gulag, but they would have laughed at the notion that they were re-educated. Most would have used words such as traumatized, brutalized, or disfigured, terms not featured on the propaganda posters.